Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Do Up Big Shit Today podcast. I am Hannah Gilbert / Mulhern. I'm working on that. I'm here today with Nicole. Hello, Nicole.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm also a hyphenated last name.
Oh, you are?
I do not use my hyphenated last name. And I forget about it sometimes.
I just forgot about it leading into this podcast. Because, I mean, it's a process, changing your name and all that. So, I don't really know what I'm supposed to go by while I'm changing it. So, I just do both.
I'm still Nic Hipp, but I'm married into someone else. So, I'm still Nic Hipp.
I like that. Hip's got a good...
I know. It's cool.
It is cool.
It's not that cool. I love you, but it's not that cool.
Yeah, I got you. There's a video. This is just a total side tangent. There's one person, I'll send you the reel, but she was basically saying
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You should pick the cooler last name.
I know.
Oh, damn. Okay, so I wanted to have you on here, and I'm going to read your USP, which you've given me, which I think is super helpful to give folks a glance of your background, and they'll obviously listen to this and figure out why you're on today, because you're very inspiring. You've got a wide, balanced realm of health practices, well-being, all of the sorts. So I'll read this really quick. So Nic Hipp Fit, which is your Instagram username, or Nicole, specializes in holistic, balanced fitness coaching that emphasizes sustainable health practices and emotional well-being. Nic's extensive background as an athlete, combined with her personal journey overcoming eating disorders and exercise addiction, equips her to offer a unique, empathetic, and effective approach to fitness. She combines her knowledge of over 15 certifications to help women achieve a balanced, healthy lifestyle.
When you read that, I'm like, who is that?
That is you, honey. That is you. That's fucking awesome. Oh my God. So crazy. So, I mean, you and I talked briefly about, before we started hitting record, or I hit record, about kind of your interest and introduction to the space. But my first one of my questions is what encouraged you to, you have a fitness background, you mentioned swimming, but what encouraged you to jump into the coaching space?
I think there are two types of people in the world. There are people who are natural born leaders and people who are meant to be led. And I think I naturally just fall into the leader side of things. And if I see something that I don't like, I'll speak up about it. I'll kind of take initiative on that. And I did start swimming, and I kind of got thrown into the coaching world with swimming, but then I really liked it. And when I was doing cross training and stuff, my cross trainer was like, you need to be helping other kids. You need to be coaching and stuff like that. You'd be really good at this. And kind of just got thrown into it. And I am very prideful with, educating yourself on things before you start telling other people about it. I think, especially in the fitness and wellness space, there are tons of people who will say, oh, this worked for me. It's going to work for everybody. But they don't have the science and education behind it. So before working with people, I got a lot of certifications and made sure that I was educated enough to be able to talk to others and help them. So that's how I got into the coaching side of things. And then it got addicting. It's very addicting to help other people. So can you be addicted to coaching? I don't know, but
probably.
I struggled with orthorexia and an exercise addiction in college. And when I was in treatment, I was like, I never want to do this again. I mean, I met incredible people and met, people that I still talk to now, but I never want someone to go through that. And I never want someone to get to that point. And not that I have, some sort of obligation to help other people, but I did feel obligated because I was like, I have all this experience. I can use it to help other people. And then I wanted to create a business that wasn't focused on aesthetics or weight, and more so focused on how can people still be a total badass, but do it in a very realistic way, and do it in a way that, is conducive to the lifestyle that they want to live. Because especially social media, you see all these people who are ripped and super shredded and lean and have, great bodies and a great life, but you have no idea what the heck they're struggling with. But those are the people that, you and I see is like, oh, I want to be them. I want to do that. But it's not attainable for, the average day person. So that's where I kind of felt the need to help and go that route. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. So no, that was very, like, I think it's beautiful how the path to led you where you are today was very authentic. You were put in a space, maybe not, you chatted about, you were very fortunate that you had a very supportive coach and all that, but you've witnessed a lot of things. You're like, ooh, this is not acceptable. This needs to change.
Yeah. I mean, I had an old-timey coach in swimming. So sure, he would make some questionable comments, but I think that I have a good enough head on my shoulders. Not saying that other people don't, but I kind of just took him with a grain of salt. Like, oh, he's an old man, this is just an old man's day or whatever. But I did see some kids that would come in and their coaches would be like, you need to lose weight at 12 years old. You don't need to do that at 12 years old. Or, people calling them fat, or especially, I think we mentioned before that in the swim space, you're naked, basically. Or same thing with gymnastics. You're in a leotard, you're in a swimsuit. So you see a lot more than maybe like a soccer player or something. And, your body is out for display for other people to see. So maybe if you are, 12 years old going through puberty and you have a little bit of extra weight, sure, but you don't need to put that on display. And, kids, those are their formative years. So you need to make sure that you are helping them and giving them the best and safe space possible so that they can, have confidence in their self, and not even have confidence in their body, but have confidence in their capabilities.
Yeah. I didn't realize that, obviously, like, kids are sponges, they pick up information. I didn't realize like the formative years of like the habits that, or not habits, but the lessons learned when you're like younger still like stick with you as an adult. Like that's kind of where that foundation gets laid. I wasn't aware it was that early.
I didn't really think about that until I was in treatment, to be quite honest with you. And when I was in treatment, we did a lot of like cognitive behavioral therapy and really getting to the root cause. Because, when you develop an eating disorder, it's usually not, I'm afraid to eat, or what I eat is going to make me fat. Usually there's a deep rooted cause. And there are actually some crazy studies that are coming out that can show that there might be a link between the way that our brains function. Now, I'm not a scientist and I've just seen this. I've just read some studies on it, but our brains act the same way as like an alcoholic's brain or someone who is addicted to drugs. And it's kind of the same dopamine rush that you get. And I completely agree. It's an addictive thing and it's an addictive process. But anyway, when I was in treatment, I realized that, the things that I had struggled with probably started in middle school and kind of came out in college. But I was kind of being, taught these things and taught these practices so early on that then when I was able to have more control in college, that's when it all started to pop out. So like my binge eating habits started in middle school, and it came from, do you know the term like almond mom? Have you heard of that?
I have, yeah. Is it like almond mom, Patagonia mom? Is it kind of similar to that? Okay.
Kind of similar. Like an almond mom is someone who like says, oh, I can't eat that, I need to wear a dress later, or something like that. Or you can't have, cookies, we need to have carrot sticks or something. And that was totally my mom. Nothing against her, but I think our parents and, they grew up in a time of like diet culture. They started diet culture essentially. So then when you have children that are put into that, it's like, if I want a cookie, I should be able to eat a cookie. I shouldn't need to replace it with carrot sticks. And those little habits start when we're young, and then we build off of those once we have more control as an adult. So, it's so sad to me to see when I was coaching young kids, I was seeing them come into the swim space and be like, oh, my mom says I'm not allowed to eat that. And that is like a red flag of like, okay, well, your mom is telling you that you can't eat this at 12 years old. How are you going to act when you're 25? You know, are you still not going to be allowed to eat that? And with kids, it's like you tell them don't touch it, they're going to want to touch it more. So if you tell them you can't have that, of course, naturally, they're going to want to gravitate towards it more. But yeah, I think it starts very, very young. And like for me personally, I, you know, started those habits when I remember going to school and not eating breakfast, not eating lunch, and then coming home and like having the most random snacks. Of course, because I'm 14, 15 years old, starving. And then I come home after doing like 2 practices and I eat the most random stuff, and you know, you hide it and
you're fucking hungry. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
You hide the trash and stuff like that. And that is characterized as binge eating. But when you're 14, 15, you don't really know that. And you don't know what that is. So that's definitely how it started. And I think after talking to a lot of people in treatment, that's how it started for them too. So
I was very lucky. My mom, she never was like, no, don't have this. It was more just like, yeah, like you can have the cookie, but just know that there's not the best stuff in there. So you're not going to feel great. But like, so have a cookie, have whatever you want, but maybe like be mindful about not having so many you make yourself sick.
That's awesome.
So that was like,
so great.
She was really awesome with that. So like we always had like treats in the house.
You were the fun house.
We were the fun house, but like when it came to body image, and we'll get into this later, like that was where I like picked up some bad habits and had to kind of relearn like the mirror looking back at you type thing. But it'll be interesting to see, hopefully in a good light, as people like talk about it, like you coming out and talking about like, hey, this is happening, this needs to change. Because obviously in the States, and I'm sure around the world, like kids are starting younger. Kids are getting thrown into the space at like the athletic space at like 8 and like doing club soccer all year round. Like it's starting really young.
Yeah.
So,
and having, you know, like coaches that preach good habits. And even like if you're a coach, you don't need to talk about body image. Or you don't need to talk about a child's body. You don't. That just shouldn't be something that you hit on. Maybe, you know, I've met some coaches that are like, oh, this person is pretty small. Like we need to talk about, you know, proper nutritional habits. And that's perfect. That is awesome. Or, you know, maybe they're lacking a little bit in muscle. Like let's throw them into some cross training or something like that. And that's fine. But making comments about kids' bodies is just not appropriate. You don't need to do that. They need to be worried about being kids. They don't need to be worried about how they look in a bathing suit.
Yeah. It should never be about body image. Like if it's anything, it should be about health. Like let's get muscle so you feel stronger, so you don't get hurt. Like that's like where I think the misconception is, 100%. Or the misalignment. So, I mean, you talked about this a little bit, and you mentioned the word balance quite a bit, at least when we were talking earlier. Would you say that is one of the things, and what are the things that make you as a coach different from other coaches like out there?
I do think so. I really think that social media plays a huge role into this, and you see a lot of people who are very extreme, and it's not realistic for the average everyday person. You know, you see people waking up at 4 a.m. doing 3 workouts before 7 a.m. or whatever it might be. And for the average person that has 2 kids, husbands, and or a wife, like a spouse, and then also friends and stuff, that's not sustainable. But you can still have, you know, body goals. Like I'm not against having, you know, aesthetic goals, but it needs to be realistic. You know, is it realistic for a female to have a 6-pack? Maybe not genetically, maybe, but you know, the average person, like it's not healthy to be that lean. And I feel like my coaching, I really try to bridge the gap between being a badass, but also being realistic with yourself and setting realistic goals. Because again, you have people who are on the extreme side of things, and the average person can't compare themselves to that. And it's very hard because you want to. Of course, we're, you know, naturally gravitated to want to look the best and do that. But what about feeling the best? You know, you see these people who are ripped and shredded and stuff, but how are their hormones? How are their relationships with others? And probably not great. Maybe. You know, they could be, but, you know, For the most part, it's not. So I think my coaching really focuses on how you feel versus how you look, and how are you performing. Yeah, are you performing best, not just in, you know, your sport or your athletic goals, or even if you just want to dabble in weightlifting, but how are you performing at your job? How are you performing in your relationship? How are you performing in other areas of your life too? Because, you know, when you look at what you do on a daily basis, your exercise routine is a very small percentage of it, and what you eat is a very small percentage of it. But your work is a large percent. Your conversations with other people are a huge percent, and that also needs to be performing well as well.
Yeah, that's good insight, because I think you almost, not you, but like as a person in like the athletic space, like I would call myself, I'm a runner, but I don't know if I would be long distance. Like I'm training for 100K.
Okay, that's
so
long
like,
distance. Yeah.
So that's long distance. So
yes. What would long distance be then?
I'm not sure. Maybe
a
like
marathon is long distance. Oh my god, 100K. That's not that long.
I mean, we used to people that are like the 250. Like you used to people that like spend 5 days on the trail. Like that to me is like.
This is such a good conversation though, because I think this also plays into it too. So I see people who a 5K is distance to them, but someone like yourself, you're like 100K is not distance, a 250K is distance. But to someone else, that is like not even in their thinking process, because they can hardly get to a 5K. And I think everything is so relative. So you see these people, and I'm not putting you out there like this, but you see people who are like, oh, a 5K, whatever. But then you have other people who are like, I can't even fathom doing a 5K right now. And I think everyone should be approached all relatively, right? So, and I think coaching, like a lot of people will put themselves into different boxes of being like, I'm a marathon coach. So then which is great. So, but then you're cutting out so many people. So I really like the balanced approach to like, yeah, that's awesome that you're doing 100K, but that is totally unattainable for so many people. So what about the people who are also doing a 5K? Whereas for you, it's like maybe a 5K is too fast. Maybe that is like too much of a sprint, and there's no possible way that you could do that. So yeah, I just think that's a really interesting conversation too.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the conversation on it is too, because like people that sprint the 5K, I've done a 5K once, I will never do it again. Cause I'm like, that is, it's 15, 20, 35 minutes, however long it takes, but you're going all out, like on the precipice of like borderline peeing yourself, like because you're running so fast. I'm not interested.
I've peed myself so many times.
And see, that also is a topic no one talks about. But I know. Why does no one talk about peeing themselves when they run fast? I think it's a woman thing.
I was just about to say, I think it's a female thing.
It is. Yeah. But no, I think it also comes down to the point of like, why are you doing what you're doing? Am I running the 100K to keep up with my friends? Or am I running the 100K because I want to challenge myself?
Or are you doing it because you feel like you have to in some way? I think that is also important. Like, I've met some people who get into endurance sports, triathlons, or whatever it might be, to lose weight. And I'm like, that is the last reason you should get into it.
Yeah, no.
And, you know, because you burn a lot of calories. And I see that a lot I saw that a lot in treatment too. People would get into marathons because it's an excuse to exercise a lot. And whenever I meet with people, I have to make sure that like, what is their why behind doing certain things? And I, with coaching, I'm always asking, and it's so funny because some of my clients will say something and then I'll get another message from them and be like, let me rephrase that because I know you're going to come at me. But it's just the way that they're saying certain things, because going back to the kids conversation, the way you talk to yourself and the way that you phrase certain things, it gets ingrained. So if you're like, oh, I'm going to train for 100K, I get to run like 25 miles. I'm going to burn so much. That means I get to eat so much. But it should be what you were saying before. I'm training for this because I want to push myself. I want to see what I'm capable of. And that has nothing to do with the exercise portion and the food portion of it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do get into it for that reason.
I could see that. I could definitely see that. I'm sure it's probably different for each space, like half Ironman. I'm with you. I'm not doing a full. I did a half. I trained for a half. I'm not doing a full. I have no interest spending that much time on a bike. My back, crotch, all of it was like hurt it.
Yeah.
No. And I commend people who spend that time training. But I think
maybe
that also
if I don't have a full-time job.
maybe, or you really love it that much. I think if someone loves it, like, oh my God, make it the priority, do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is a beautiful balance, which you talk about is like, make sure you're good. Are you doing this for the right reasons?
Well, I sat down when I did my first one last year. I sat down and one of my former clients was like, you should do this. You swam. And I feel like swimmers have kind of a leg up into the triathlon space because a lot of time swimming is people's like crutch, but biking is definitely my crutch, and the swim part is a piece of cake. And so we sat down and he was like, why are you doing this? And I was like, what do you mean? It's so cool. And he was like, no, but like, why are you doing this? And he was like, I'm nervous that it's going to become addictive, and I'm nervous that it's going to, bring up past habits and stuff. And I really had to sit with myself and really think about it for a couple of weeks and be like, is this something that I can do and not get addicted to it, and not and be okay with skipping workouts, and be okay with, eating more than I need to, or, fueling workouts. That's a huge component of it. And people with an exercise addiction typically don't fuel workouts. And so there was a time like last year where I really had to question, like, am I forcing myself to do this? I think it's very hard for me to differentiate having discipline and being forceful about it. And you have to think about your why. Like, are you doing this because, okay, yeah, I did skip a couple, I'm being a little bit too lax, or are you doing it because you feel like you have to, like, oh, I haven't burned enough calories today, or I've skipped a lot. And then you start doing double days, triple days, and all of that. It was just very, very hard to differentiate between all of it. But yeah, it is addicting.
For someone listening, because I mean, I'm curious myself, like I think I know such a small population of people in the space, obviously, but like I thrive, and a lot of my friends that I, also do these marathons, Ironmans. Like I have one friend who I had on here, she went to Ironman Worlds, like, and
That's awesome.
she was such a badass. But for her, she purely loved, because I asked her, like, why on the podcast, why are you doing this? She's like, I love it. Like, I really love it. But if you're someone listening and you are doing like double days because it's required for your training plans, how do you check in with yourself and be like, okay, am I doing this for the right reasons? Or am I doing it because I feel like I'm supposed to? Like, how do you have that conversation with yourself?
I think it's very important to be realistic with yourself. Like, I think someone who is at the caliber of going to Worlds is in a different space than the average person. So her discipline might be different than, say, mine, because I'm not training to go to Worlds. I'm just training to have fun. But, professional athletes are in their own little bubble. I think, I'm not saying that it is appropriate for them to push themselves to different limits, but for the average person who is literally just doing it for fun, I think checking in with themselves, just sitting down and thinking, how is the quality of my life? Is this impeding on the quality of my life? Am I missing out on things because of this? Like one of my rules, or one of our rules, like with triathlon between my husband and I, is like, I'm not going to say no to things because of training, because that's a slippery slope. The minute you're like, oh, I'm not doing this because I have to go bike for 4 hours, it's like, really? What's the point? You're not going to Worlds. You're just doing this for fun. You should spend time with your family and friends over training. And that's just for me. And I see that a lot with other people who have struggled in that space too. It's like, oh, well, I'm just going to do it this one time. And then 1 turns into 2, 2 turns into 3, 3 turns into 4. And then you're skipping out on all family events to go bike for 6 hours. And that's inappropriate. But again, for someone who's training for worlds, it is appropriate for them to do that. They do have to say no. But for the average person, it's like, do you really need to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not. And when it comes to like food and stuff, sure, it is important that, you know, you're keeping up with your nutrition and all of that. But it's also important, again, not to say no to certain things because of your training. For the average person. You should be able to marry the two, like have a balance between soul foods and nutrient dense foods when you're also training in that space too. But yeah, that's how I check in with myself, is like, how am I overworking myself in one area? Am I saying no to certain things? Is the quality of my life outside, like, how am I working? Is my performance going down? How's my relationship with my husband? Am I bickering with him all the time? Am I cranky all the time? Maybe. Am I like going to bed at 5 p.m. because I'm exhausted and not spending time with family and friends? Maybe. Then I need to check in with myself.
Gotcha.
When it becomes your whole life, it should be a part of your life that you enjoy, not your entire life.
Yeah.
Unless you're training for something like Worlds, then let it be your entire life.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So just checking on the quality, I think that's a great way of putting that. Because I have, I ask people as well, because I'm also curious, like, how are you training for a 250? Like, what does that look like? Because I'm training for 100K and I haven't even peaked yet. Like, I'm just in like probably like phase 2. There's like 5 phases.
Yeah.
And like, how are you pushing 150, 200-mile weeks? How are you doing? Like, what does that look like? And I think for some, it's like, oh, I'm working through some things mentally. So it's PTSD, it's childhood trauma, it's better, or you're an addict and you're recovering or something like that. It's replacing something.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, for the average person, have the goal, but is your quality of life, if you're getting up at 2 a.m., going to bed at 9 p.m., you haven't seen your family.
Yeah. Also, I think it's interesting that you bring that up too, and we don't have to go into this because it is very personal, but I like mentioning before how eating disorders, exercise addictions can kind of mirror alcoholism and stuff like that. Do you find that it's difficult for you to kind of differentiate replacement stuff? Because I think it's tough. It's a tough conversation to have. Like, are you replacing, say, alcoholism? Are you replacing alcohol with running 150 miles a week? How healthy is that then? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you're pushing your body to that extent, I think therapy is the answer to everything. So
yeah, I agree with you.
Maybe I just answered my own question, but do you see that? Do you see that in that space? I'm not familiar with ultra marathons and stuff like that. I have worked with a couple ultra marathoners, but I'm not comfortable enough to talk in that space. But I am curious, like, do you think that people replace those things with exercise?
I think exercise, I haven't met anyone that's like struggling with addiction or like that, but I think people who have a traumatic past or have dealt with trauma, PTSD, so a lot of like people that were in the military and having a hard time coping. I see a lot of the ultra running space therapeutic, because it's a way to turn your brain off and ride kind of like the endorphin highs. You're moving your body, you're back to like a human state. It takes your brain out of it. I don't think it's the end all be all, solution till like you're 80. I think there's definitely a place when therapy comes in. But a lot of the friends, myself included, like I run, like if I'm having a shitty day, I go for a run. If there's something that I'm struggling with mentally, like my long runs that are, I'm going to be running 36 miles at one point for a long run. Like that's a very scary, because it's a lot of time with myself, but that also is very interesting to me because I'm curious about what's going to happen, like what's going to come into my brain about like childhood trauma and all of that sort of stuff. And I'm curious to know, but I don't think running is a replacement for therapy. I think the two hand in hand are a beautiful combination. But I do see a lot of people that do have past trauma, PTSD, was in the military, have that ultra running as a background because it's a safe space.
Yeah. I think it's such a gray area too, of like, are you doing this to escape or are you doing this, like you said, it almost sounds like, when people do ashwagandha and they have like these come to Jesus moments. That's what it feels like when you run for that amount of time. It's like, oh my God, I didn't realize that. I also think like I'm very creative when I run. Like I run with my phone. I have my notes app open and I'm like thinking of things during that time. But going back to what we were talking about before is like, there is such a gray area of like, are you doing this to run away from things? Are you doing this to discover things? Are you doing this as a replacement? Like, okay, I struggled with alcohol, but now I'm just going to go into running. I saw that with my mom's husband now, not my dad, but my stepdad now, I guess. He was a Marine vet and he got into long distance running. He does marathons, but he is addicted to exercise. Like his day is ruined if he doesn't get his run in. His day is ruined if he can't control the food that he's consuming. And that is kind of the gray area that I'm curious about, is like, when is it helpful? When is it harmful? And I think it's individual to each person, but that's like a check-in kind of moment of like, am I using this like to you, like you said, to your benefit, or are you using this as a harm?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And there are things that I do in my training to make sure that I check in. So like on Monday is like my rest day. So like I'm walking, I'm stretching, I will not, and it's really hard because there are sometimes where I want to go run. Like it's been a shitty day or I want to go, I will not run. Like that is where like, if that is the discipline of almost the hardest day, is to not do things. It's like, okay, why do I feel the need I need to run? Well, because it feels good. Okay, but it also feels good to let your body heal. So you need to do that. Exactly. So like having that inner dialogue, like you mentioned, having those check-ins are very helpful because it feels good to run and have those endorphins. So it can be, like, this is how I can reset my day. But yeah.
I had that moment yesterday. Rest days are so difficult, but looked at like my training block and I was like, okay, I have to do this cycle, right? And I was like, I really don't want to do this. And the only reason I would be doing it is because I was sitting at my desk for 12 hours. And that to me is kind of my red flag moment of like, okay, I would only be doing this because I was sedentary all day. And for most people, they would think like, oh, that'd be a good way to move and all of that. But my brain doesn't work that way. My brain was like a punishment almost. Like you sat all day, you have to do this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I have to check in with myself of like, okay, no, I'm not going to do it because if I did, it would be punishment. But I see it the way that I do see it the way that you see it, of like, I'm moving my body, I'm doing, this for me. But that's my slippery slope of like, if I do it once, I'm going to continue doing it.
Yeah. So question for you, because I also see like this popping up on, I reference Instagram a lot, mainly because I think people aren't aware of how much they engulf, if that's the right word, ingest. Consume.
It's your diet. The diet is not just what you eat, it's everything that you are consuming. It's
like
media, culture, and the people that you're talking to. Like your friends are part of your diet. How are you consuming like your relationships with your friends? Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I never thought about it that way. Like that is very true. Because I mean, I always know the rule about like friends, like who you surround yourself is what you become, or what you tend to pick up. No, but where I was going was like on Instagram and other things, like you see the topic of, lighter being faster, or there being like, in my case, it was opposite, where I was like coming into, like I mentioned, I played Division I basketball. I'm 6'2". I was a string fucking bean, like string bean. Like I had no muscle. And so my weight, and this is no fault of like my strength coach or my head coach. I think they did what they were trying to do, which was like, this girl's going to get slashed and like thrown around. We got to protect her at her body, but we also have to like protect her, make her stronger so that when she does, I was a post player. I'm going against girls that had like 100 pounds, 6'5", like, so I know their intentions were true, but my weight was something that was talked about. Like I needed to
Yeah.
gain like 25 pounds of muscle.
Which is
in
so
order-
hard for someone that has a body type like you. I think my husband's the same way. He runs is not the right word. He is a like smaller build, and it takes a lot. Like some people, like I can put on muscle like no tomorrow, but I can maintain it then. But someone like you and him, it's hard for you to gain the muscle and then maintain it is another story.
Yeah. And so by the end of like my freshman year, and I've gone to a place where I can talk about my weight. I used to not be able to. Like scales used to be the absolute end all be all.
I feel
but like
you.
fuck it, like going into my freshman year, I think I weighed 158. Like I'm gonna be string bean
at 6'2" is very
at 6'2". Like, and it wasn't like I looked like emaciated. It was just like I was super active. I didn't really, I was playing basketball all the time, and I had very little muscle. And so they wanted me to gain 25 pounds.
So much.
And it took 3 years for me to do so. But I became so obsessed with the scale and the disappointment of the scale and the numbers on the scale.
Yeah.
That I'm just curious from your perspective, why you think women, and maybe it is the same in men, but it's just like gaining weight versus losing weight. Why do you think it's talked about so much in the women's space?
Women in particularly, I don't have the answer to that. I think women, our bodies are just talked about more in general.
Yeah.
When you see a woman, like in culture and stuff, in pop culture, we always just talk about her body,
Yeah.
And I think I've been seeing this a lot more recently, but like having a lower belly, which is 1,000% normal. We have a uterus, we're gonna have a lower belly, it's gonna extend. Thank you.
Yes.
People will make comments about like pregnancy, like, oh, is she pregnant? Is that a bump? It's like, keep your shitty comments to yourself. Maybe I'm on my cycle and my uterus is expanding. It doesn't mean I'm pregnant. But I think people will just nitpick women of like, how's her hair look? How's her face look? Does she have acne? Is she overweight? Is she underweight? How do her arms look? How do her legs look? Does she have cellulite? How does her butt look? Whereas for men, it's like, he's a big guy. Okay. He's a meatball. I hear that a lot. I see that a lot.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily pick their body apart. But women in the athletic space, I think the idea that smaller and lighter equals faster, there's some truth behind it. Because if you look at elite marathoners, elite ultra runners, track stars and stuff, they do have a specific body type, right? But this goes back to the conversation of, is Stacy down the street, who's an active runner with her run group, at the same caliber as someone who is training for the Olympics? No. So why do they need to look the same? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can still be an ultra marathon or a marathon runner and not have that body type, because that's not your life. You're not training for one specific thing. And I think, at least for me, I've had people make comments of like, oh, you've gained weight, I bet you're slower. Like, no shit, I'm slower, thanks. But I also have a way better life, Maybe when I was lighter and faster, that's all I had. I didn't have good relationships with anybody else. And maybe, for you, it's the same thing of like, you have a set weight that your body is happy at. And sure, when you were playing at a high caliber, they did want you to change to protect yourself and to be stronger and stuff. But now that you're not doing that at a high caliber, why do you need to do something that isn't right for your body,
Yeah.
But that is, I think it all comes back to the premise of like, look at, how you're training. Are you going to be an elite star? Yes or no? Yes.
Yeah.
You got to do something different. If you're not, if you're just the average everyday person, you have to make sure that the rest of your life has quality to it too, and not just one specific area.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen, it's so interesting to me because like I've had conversations with my husband. Like he's played tennis in college. He was a cross country runner in high school. Like the dude could eat a box of bonbons and have several six packs the rest of his life. Like he doesn't have to worry about like any of that, but he didn't feel good. So that's a different thing. But like, I've had to have conversations with him open and honestly, where I've had to like, I look at myself in the mirror, like I have a swimsuit on, and I look at like, okay, this is what I look like, but what's wrong with this? Nothing. I have a functioning body that's healthy. I'm able to run long distances. It can keep up with what I ask it to, but I don't have the six pack. And I think like, I don't think I have a body that's, first off, I would have to change my entire life to have that six pack. And what does that six pack bring to me? Exactly. What does that look like? And I'm not interested in giving up what that looks like.
Yeah. And people will say, you know, I'll be happy when I'm X weight. It's like, well, I don't know. You'll have a six pack, but what else are you going to have too? And I think, going back to like, why does it talked more about in women's sports? I think control is huge. I mean, you probably didn't have much control in college. You were probably told what to do. Everything was kind of like, this is what you need to do, so do it. Same thing with like academics, like this is what you have to do, so do it. The only control you might have had is like, actually, I don't know, because I didn't really have much control in college either, but you can control your food, you can control your exercise, but the rest of it is not up to you. And we as humans want to control whatever we can. We are controlling human beings, and having some sense of security, you know, oh, I know that I get to run later. That's secure, right? But you don't know what else is going to happen. And I think with many athletes, weight is that control aspect too. You can control that. But I think for you, maybe it was a little different because you didn't have that control. And you couldn't control your weight, but you could control other aspects of it, like your food, your exercise and stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, I was very blessed to have a high school coach who was not ever fixated on like my weight and just keeping me healthy. But when I went to college, it was like, oh, you're at the big leagues now. Like you need to like, and again, I said this earlier, but like, it's not of any fault to my strength coach. Like I genuinely believe they were trying to keep me healthy. Cause it's like, this is what you're going up against. Like you need to be able to protect yourself. So let's start building some muscle. I think where the slippery slope was just being told, you need to eat, you need to eat, you need to eat. And I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good eating that much. And so like being in the weight room, like I still have a hard time lifting weights. I'm just like, I still feel them as punishment because I was not strong enough. So like having those check-ins where it's like my weight was talked about as a check-in, like that shouldn't be a check-in because I didn't ever look strong. I mean, I am strong, but I because I'm so long, it's not like there's going to be, I don't know. I think each person is a case.
Stretched out a little bit more.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. Yeah, but I mean, like, I think where the balance is like people set goals of like, okay, I want to be X amount of weight. I want to have a six pack. And I think like the fine line, especially because like the podcast that this is, I have a lot of runners and people that are on here, is it's nice to have like, you can have a balance. You don't have to be up at 4 a.m. Like, and I think having you talk about it is just another way for people to remember like, okay, I don't have to kill myself to do what I'm trying to do. There can be a bit of a balance.
I think it is also hard too, because single athlete I've ever met is type A personality. And, you know, it is hard to find that balance with people who are type A, because you have to say like, you have to say no at some point. It's like, no, you can't have this. But then in our minds, we're like, but why?
Right.
Can I do that? Same thing with weight too. Is like, sure, you know, you could probably have a six pack, right? But why would you want to do that with other, you know, you're not going to enjoy it as much. But then part of your brain is probably thinking like, but can I?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But can I do both?
It's finding the right ways to like, okay, I want to push myself here. Like I want to do long distance. I'm pushing myself mentally.
Yeah.
Not, and like, oh, I want to have a six pack. Yeah, that's a push, but there's a visual benefit. I'm not healthier. Maybe I am. I'm eating less, you know, potatoes. I don't even know, but that's not even that. You know what I mean? Like if the end result is something visual, it's probably not going to be a good
Yes. Oh, I love that you said that. I
Yeah.
love that you said that. I 100% agree.
What exactly, because I think I know, I'm pretty sure, not all 15. What are some of the certifications that you have where it's like 15 of them, girl. So do you have them all memorized?
No, I don't. And I really should. I just know that it's 15, and I know that I'm working on another one right now, so it'll be 16.
Oh.
Well, you have to do continuing education credits.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
So I'll always just be getting more because you always have to like do it to maintain it. But some of the ones that I use all the time are certified strength and conditioning coach. That one was so hard for me to get. That's the one I use all the time. Corrective exercise and rehabilitation. That one's a really good one. That was for like, I don't want to say the geriatric community, but people who are like 55 and up, like fall risk people. But it does, like, say you had knee surgery, like I'd be able to give you modifications for different exercises and stuff like that. So I do use that one a lot. Sports nutrition, macro consulting, motivational interviewing, like talking with people, like how to get them to be motivated in what they're doing. Women's hormone health, pre and postnatal.
Oh, shit.
Did I say endurance sports nutrition?
No.
I'm trying to think of what else I use on a daily basis.
Oh my God. You're like a knowledge Swiss Army knife in the best way and loving way possible.
I don't really, those are some of the ones that I use on a daily basis. But
yeah.
I'm really, really interested in women's health because our hormones play such a huge role in our training. I'm not one to promote cycle-based training, so like changing the way that you perform and train based on where you are in your cycle. But I just think that it's very interesting, and I mean, I see it myself with even just my cycle of how I perform when I train based off where I am. Tactical training, like first responders training and military performance training. I use that one a lot. I use that one a lot in college. But I'm very interested in that too. And so the women's health one, the tactical sports, and then I'm very interested in how anatomy plays a role in how you perform too. I learned a lot about that when I got my bike fitted, to be honest, because every person is they're built very different. And like, I didn't know that I had a hip imbalance. So one of my hips is a little bit higher than the others. And it really showed on different angles when I was riding the bike. So then I was like, it made me think like, how does that play a role into how people are running and strength training as well? If you're anatomically built a little bit differently, how is that playing a role in how you're building muscle as well? And then nutrition. I am just fascinated with nutrition by what you put in is how you execute. So yeah, those are my favorite.
Damn. I would be curious to see like the anatomy, because I mean, I've had people, based on like, okay, basketball players are tall, running people are usually shorter, swimmers have like huge shoulders, like longer, like bigger lungs, if that's a thing. Like I would be interesting to see as well. But the nutrition bit, I'm sure it's fascinating to me. Probably obviously not as much as it is to you, but like I look at it from like a country perspective of like how the US, and I love going to other countries and traveling because you see like 35-year-old women like breastfeeding a baby with like a little belly, like not even a belly, just a normal human body. And she feels so comfortable. In the US, you see a mom on the side, like with the beach, towels wrapped around. Like it's just so different how it is here.
Yeah.
And it's also fucked up because all of the stuff that's in our food that we eat and consume is like, so there's so much more crap than is in our food than there is in other places in the world. So it's like, you're really screwed because not only do you have higher standards, but there's crap in your food.
Foods. Yeah. Even like fruits and vegetables, like people and like meats and stuff like that. And like living in the US, you kind of just have to deal with it. You know what I mean? And I don't want to say that you have to deal with eating shit food, but it's just making conscious choices about when you do go out. Like we don't really go out that much. And honestly, I can't tell you the last time that I was at a fast food place. Maybe I'll get Chick-fil-A. Don't mess with me at Chick-fil-A at an airport though. I will get Chick-fil-A at an airport. But that's like the last time I can think about eating fast food.
So, question for you then, for someone who's like in the endurance space or just in the running space or athletic space, and there is that stigma of like, oh, I need to look a certain way in order to perform a certain way, and like that conversation, or because I'll even admit, like, I'm someone who, if I see a friend of mine who like just got back from run, like, oh my god, you look great, like you look like you're vibing, there's energy, like I want to make sure I'm not, what's the word, I'm not complimenting someone on the way they look that could negatively impact their mental space based on their appearance.
That's such a good question.
So what do you recommend for that?
Don't comment anything on the body. Nothing.
Okay.
Comment on people, like if you see someone that has just come back from a run or something like that, maybe ask them questions about their run. Ask them about, you know, how they felt during it. Ask them, be like, oh, you're glowing. And that's not commenting like, oh, you look great or something like that. Maybe if you see some like clothes that they're wearing, like, oh, that sports bra is so cute, that looks really good on you.
Okay.
Or their leggings, like, oh, those look really great on you, or something like that. And you're indirectly commenting like the way that they look, but it's not focused on their body. And even like spouse stuff, like I think the way that your significant other talks to you is very impactful too. So like we don't comment on each other's bodies just naturally, because why would you want to do that? Like, oh, you know, you look so happy today, or and stuff like that. Just don't comment anything on the body, because you don't know how that person is feeling that day. You know, they might be picking themselves apart in their legs or their stomach or something. So just not mentioning it at all is so much more effective. And I think that, just don't comment on their body, period.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair. Good advice. So what, and this is like the last question, and we'll jump into rapid fire questions. So was there a moment in your life that changed your mindset on smaller does not equal faster? And what made you want to change your life into a more sustainable and healthier lifestyle?
Well, I did get really fast, and I did get really good at what I was doing, and it was very addicting. And I was like, this is going to be awesome. Like I could do so much with, you know, athletics and stuff, but my organs were failing. I was going into heart failure. I was on a heart monitor for like a month. My heart rate would drop below, like, I think it was like 15 when I was sleeping. And I went to the OB, and the OB was like, you might not be able to have kids ever. Right now, your hormone levels are showing that you're infertile. And basically my entire, like all of my health was failing. My hair was falling out. And for whatever reason, I identify a lot with my hair, which is totally weird. Long curly hair, and it was falling out. And I had to chop it to like a bob, and it wasn't curly anymore. It was like going straight. And my now husband and I have been together for a long, long time, like since high school. And he was getting to the point where he was like, I can't do this anymore. And there was one day where in college, both my parents showed up to my apartment. They're divorced. So them being in the same room was like, what are they doing here?
Right.
And my now husband, he was boyfriend at the time, they all took my keys, my phone, my computer. I was sleeping, and then I woke up and they were all there. And they were like, if you don't get help, like, we're going to take you somewhere to get help. Like, you can't do this. Like, you're dying. And I was like, screw you. I said very nasty things to them. I didn't talk to them for like a week. I went home for drill for Army, and I drove to my dad's house, and I was like, let's go. And so then I went to treatment, and that was kind of the day that just ended it all. And I was like, this isn't worth it. Like, of course I can continue having, you know, all of these great things athletically, but deep down, nothing is going to get better. Everything else is just going to fade. So what's more important? And I think part of me thinks that there was a way to have both. There was a way to still be crushing it when it came to athletics and the Army and all of that, and still be healthy. But at the time, I was not doing it in the right way, and I was not doing it in a sustainable way. So yeah, that was the turning point. And when I was in treatment, I met people who had been there 5 or 6 times. And I was like, there's no way in hell I am coming back to doing this. So I am dedicating all of my time and energy to this. And yeah, that was that. I don't know if it was the time that I equated like smaller does not equal faster, but it was definitely the turning point that was like, you can't do this anymore. You need to find a healthier and more sustainable life. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Jeez. I think that's very impactful to see kind of what happens if you do see stories, especially in the running space, where unfortunately your story is not as uncommon as it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah, I was on a feeding tube for 2 weeks and then transferred to an eating disorder facility. So it was just an inpatient facility. And it was during COVID, so it was really weird. Like it was very weird. It was basically like a prison.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was horrible. I don't remember a lot of it. I think that like a lot of it is like pushed out. And I don't want to remember a lot of it, to be honest with you. But also, like, it did change my life for the better. So I have nothing but gratitude for it. But,
Jeez.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. Like, it is not uncommon for that to happen. But it is very scary because I still deal with, side effects of it to this day. So.
Really?
Oh, I have osteopenia, all of that. Like.
Osteopenia?
It's bone density. Osteoporosis.
Okay. I see.
Like holes in your bones and stuff. But osteopenia is the early onset of it.
I know I said one more question, but I have, what is one thing you want listeners to know about you?
I'm just an every average day person. I'm not one special. I think a lot of times people will see like fitness influencers or whatever, and it's like, oh, I could never be like them, or I could never be friends with them. But I'm just the average everyday person. I had a very average growing up, and a very average life up until now. So if I'm able to do all these things, like, so can you. Just a matter of like believing in yourself and surrounding yourself with a community of like-minded people. And eating disorders make you feel like you are the only person going through this, which is totally false. And so having a community of like-minded people helped so much. And I really just want to have a bunch of friends. So yeah, that's it. I mean, there's nothing special about it. So.
Well, I do think you are special though, because I think a lot of people that have gone like in the best way, because I don't think people that have gone through what you've gone through, I don't think everyone turns it into a place mentally where it's like, I went through this, here's what I've learned. And not only am I going to tell you what I've learned, I'm also going to be a tool to help you unlearn what you've been taught. Like, that's a very well-rounded human. So yes, you like, the situation is not uncommon. You are a very special human. I just want to make sure that you know that as well. Okay. So this rapid fire questions, it's kind of, have you seen Friends? Okay, so it's based where this came from was like the inspo of Phoebe to Joey about like north route or south route or west route or whatever, however to get to Atlantic City. So that's where this came from. Okay, tea or coffee?
Coffee. All day, every day.
Same.
Are you a tea person? Oh, I was like, I saw you drinking something earlier today.
Oh, there is coffee in here. It is delicious. I'm really into
to end so that I can go grab my third cup. Shh, don't tell anybody.
Holy shit. 3, I would shake. Well, maybe, but I
do half and half. I do half decaf, half regular.
Oh, okay.
So I'm really only having 1.5 cups of coffee.
I got you. Dessert or beach? Or desert?
Dessert. I'm actually a salty person, not sweet, but no, beach. We live in the desert right now, and I love it, but I'm a water rat through and through. I can sit on the beach for 8 hours a day. and
Same.
be so content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you live close to the beach, don't you?
I know, I do. It takes about 10 minutes. I grew up in the water. I think that's what makes it different, is like, what makes it so hard to leave is like, the water is my safe space.
Yeah,
It's where it's safe. So like, people have asked, like, LA's expensive, and it's like, yes, it is, but my mental being is by the water. So
that's
I'm going to be by the water.
Yeah. I do not do well in rain, colds. I need the sun.
Yeah.
I'm like they say I go through photosynthesis. Like, all my friends used to be like, you could just sit and just bake in the sun. And being outside by the water and all of that, just lovely. That's my happy place.
Mm-hmm. I feel that. Okay, so chews or gels?
Gels.
Gels.
For sure.
God bless you.
I have a huge box sitting right next to me I have 5 of these right next to me.
Is that the UCAN? Okay.
Addictive.
You like those?
Yeah, these ones are the unflavored ones. I'm not sponsored by them at all. Unflavored, but you don't need water. You don't need water with it. They're not like, gels are usually like a very weird consistency. Like, oh my god, what are the ones I have in my fridge right now? Goose. Oh my god. I can't. But those are like a smoothie consistency, like more liquidy.
The goos are like they're thicker, right? They're the thicker ones in the tube. Okay, yeah, I can't do those either. I've really tried. And what happens is because it tastes so bad, is I'm either inhaling a disturbing amount of fucking water to try to get it down.
Yeah, you don't need water with those.
No, okay, that's good to know. Right now I'm doing the chews. I still get this mixed up. The chews. I'm not sponsored by that. The Precision Fuel and Hydration tastes like fucking Turkish delight. It's so good. They have like a lemon flavored one.
Yeah,
it's like candy. It's
the strawberry banana or the pineapple are my favorite, and they're like watery.
Oh, whoa!
Yeah, they're not like,
those are big.
Yeah,
because they're
watery. You just go and take it right back like a shot. Pretend there's tequila in it. That's what I like to say.
Oh my god.
They don't have a nasty sugar crash. Like, you know how when you have some goos, you like feel the rush of the sugar and then you like bonk a couple, like 40 minutes later. Those are, these ones were made because their son was diabetic and they needed to give him something that sustained their energy for a longer amount of time. So it's made with a different strand of glucose. So it's not made to give you a sugar rush. I'm talking like I get paid and I don't. I just really like that.
Oh, okay. So track or road?
A road. Don't ask me to run in circles.
That's fair. Sunrise hike or sunset hike?
Sunrise. I go to bed. I'm in bed at 7:30 p.m. Read it.
Oh my.
I'm a grandma.
7:30. I'm eating at 7:30.
Oh my god. What? I have to eat dinner at like 5:30 or I get hangry.
Oh my god. That's so impressive. All right. Last question. What are 3 things that you're grateful for?
Oh, I was thinking about this so much. My family, friends, husband, dog, they're all grouped into one. They're my inner circle. But so grateful for them. My health, and this is going to sound so cheesy, but this is the only thing I can really think of, is just being able to wake up every day and like get to do the things that I do. Like, I'm very fortunate to be able to pretty much make my own schedule for the most part. I have a lot of freedoms when it comes to that. And I'm just very grateful for the life that I get to live on a daily basis. So.
Aww,
which is so
that was
dumb.
so good.
It's so cheesy.
No,
it's
it's
so
not. Not everyone takes a moment to relish in what they currently have. And so that's why I always ask that question.
Yeah. My inner circle is all in one because I love them. And then my health, because I took advantage of it for a very long time. And now I'm very grateful for my health now. And yeah, that. What are you grateful for? enough about me. What are you grateful for?
Let's see. I'm grateful for the fact that I get to live where I live by the beach. Like it's 10 minutes. I can walk to it. I'm very fortunate, and I go on a walk almost every day, and I'm so thankful.
That is awesome.
That is huge. It's huge for my mental health. It costs a fuck ton of money to live here, but I mean, like, I'd rather have a sane mind that you know. I'm very thankful for my now husband. We got married, I think, about a month and a half ago now. So,
oh
yeah, fresh. We've just kind of been navigating, like, we've been together for over 4 years. So like we've been long enough together where it's not like, oh, this is a huge transitional change. Like we lived together for 2 years before we got engaged. So it wasn't that, but he's just like the most supportive person I've ever met. I'm very thankful for that.
We love that.
We love good support. And then I'm just thankful that my body allows me to do what I want. Like if I want to go for a run, or if I want to stretch, or I want to lay in bed, I'm thankful that my body allows me to do what I ask of it.
Yeah, so. That's awesome. Can't take that for granted, for sure.
No. Oh, what a great way to end the podcast. That's pretty much it. That's all that I got for you today.
That's awesome.
Yeah, okay.
Well, this is so much fun.
Hit record. It was fun.